Well, welcome everybody to episode 5 of the launch formula. We've been running these for a number of months now, and it's my pleasure to host today's event. My name is Marcus van Vugt. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. And for me, that's the Turrbal people up here in Brisbane, and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. We've got a very special episode of the launch formula today. For those of you who've joined us before, we've been working through the various scenarios, the various stages of the launch formula. We started off with how do you generate your idea, what do you do, where do you go, developing a business case. We had a great session talking about the various data analytics tools that are available in support of validating your market entry and where you need to go. Stephen Davis, who's also on today's session, spoke last time about the business case and the importance of that. And today I'm joined by Jordan Millar. Jordan was formerly Director of Product Development at AXA, and then became Chief Exec of Confcast for a while, and is the founder of CheckRite, which provides safety checks on equipment and premises, where it started. So welcome, Jordan.
Hi, yeah. Sorry, Marcus, I muted myself, but
and as you're taking a drink, it's all
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. We're also joined by Trevor Holmes, who usually needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. Trevor was the established a program called Enact, a business development and go-to-market coaching framework for a large number of people around Queensland, and has been managing director of Avivo ICP for about 2 years now. Has been heavily involved in bringing innovations to market on behalf of his clients. So welcome, Trevor.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Great to be here. Welcome, everyone.
Now, today's session is really about two aspects: minimum viable product. What does it mean? What makes a good MVP? What makes a bad MVP? And we're also going to talk about early adopter programs. And so how do you leverage an early adopter program in what you're bringing to market, and what value can you gain out of that group of people? And I might start just with that first question, and I'll ask Trevor, what makes a good MVP, and what makes a poor MVP?
Okay, well, fortunately, Marcus, I was prepared for you to ask this question. So, putting some thought to that, it really is important to actually understand what are we actually, trying to achieve. What is an MVP? So really an MVP is a minimum viable product that is just that. It's a product that has just enough features to attract early adopters. And that is for the purpose of being able to validate the idea in the early product life cycle and at the lowest cost that you can get that done. So it's got a very specific job for very specific segment markets. Now, what it means, you really need to understand what is the job that specific market segment really does. Now, Marcus, can I share my screen, because I've just prepared something. I might have to get permission to do so if I can do that, Marcus.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I'll just share the screen because it's just a quick little visual that'll give everyone, a good understanding of the relationship between the idea and the job to be done, and therefore the minimum viable product. I'm just guessing that this is taking a little bit of time through Teams to actually come up. Has that come up yet?
It's just coming up now.
Just come up now?
No, it hasn't.
Yes,
Sorry.
it's on its way.
It's on its way, yeah.
It's on its way. Good old Teams.
It's up, Trevor.
It's up. Excellent. Well, look,
not for me. Not for me.
Yeah, but
That's okay. Keep going, Trevor.
It's slower up
Okay.
there in Queensland. You've got an hour delay, haven't you?
Well, that's right. We do have an hour delay up here. But as you can see from this visual, you create the idea, and the idea really must be something that is solving a very specific problem. Now, in the way that we go about it, we do a lot of research into the market at this early stage, as Marcus said, when we do the conceptual phase and then the business case. And in that way, we have a really good understanding of what is the job that that specific target market segment really needs done. What do they want, need, and value in order to be able to then go to the early adopters and actually get them on board? Because one of the most important things about the early stages of any innovation is adoption, not profitability. It is about just getting people on board. And so if you follow that process, then your MVP, when you go into the early adopter phase, you're actually looking to get validation. Does this actually meet the wants and the needs, and what people will value sufficiently to then engage your product and purchase it? So a really good MVP, particularly if it's a disruptive innovation, it's making the solution to the problem that the market has much more accessible. Because what we need to understand is they're either doing the job some other way now, or they could be non-consumers. In other words, they just don't do the job at all. But their options are either too sophisticated, or too complex, or too expensive for what they're actually paying for. Often they're paying for features that they don't really want. So when you're building your MVP, it is about making it much more accessible to people, much simpler, removing the complexity, and that's very important when you're testing with your early adopters, and importantly, a lower cost per unit. So as an example, you could look at stockbroking, where back in the 90s, you had to go through a stockbroker, and that for many people meant that they were non-consumers. You had to have large portfolios for the stockbrokers to be even interested in you. But then along came the process of where, a company came out and said, look, we won't provide you with all this service, but if you want to make a trade, just call us and we'll charge you $79. And then it went to the next level of innovation where it was online. And as we all know today, that has opened up the market to mums and dads and created a whole new market. And just in finishing off the question, Marcus, a bad MVP is pretty much the complete opposite. We've seen lots of examples of where people have tried to build a total solution by making lots and lots and lots of assumptions about what the market wants, and they spend enormous amounts of money. They go out to try and get early adopters, and it is so feature-based that the early adopters sort of have no idea what job this is supposed to be doing for them. So in answer to your question, Marcus, it's about keeping it simple, keeping it very, very minimal, enough to just get people, and specifically, as we'll talk a little bit later, get the early adopters to test and validate that this is doing the job the way they want it.
Thanks, Trevor. Jordan, I might pass to you. Tell us a little bit about CheckRite, how you got to where you are, and the process that you went through, and minimum viable product for what Trevor's talking about, minimum viable audience, and what your experience has been.
Yeah, I think, well, CheckRite does one thing. We give companies confidence that their assets are being maintained and their people are safe. And I think with any sort of business or startup, you really need to be quite focused on what your end goal is at an emotional level and at a very just high level. All the bits between there you work out as you're going along. And I think if we so we started off in the mining industry, and I think specifically that with the mining industry, we had, yeah, they used a lot of paper in that industry, still do, but they used a lot of paper. And what we were trying to do is we were going to try and introduce paper introduce an app-based product into an organization or an industry that was very, very non-tech savvy. And so for us, it was really important to get an MVP, and I guess you would call it an MVP, but our first MVP, I think, was because we were doing something so radically different. Our first product, our first MVP, was developed in less than 24 hours, from concept to getting it into the hands of people. Now, it didn't do anything, but that's not really that important. What it did do is it put in place some of the ideologies that we were planning to put into our product. And one of them right from the very beginning was we looked at our market and said, well, yeah, these people are technically very good at their jobs. They're excellent truck drivers or bulldozer drivers or whatever. But when it comes to technology, they're not great. And so we were wanting to introduce something that was going to be a little bit game changing in terms of a technology, in that we were going to get technology out of the way. We sort of touched on one of our early inspirations, which was the ATM. And we know that banks have ATMs all over the world. People of all varying degrees of education are able to walk up to an ATM and use it without any training. There's no user manual. That it's just, you can just go and use an ATM, and we wanted that level of adoption because of the types of people that we're going to be dealing with. We wanted that level. So our very first MVP was really just showing how they could do data capture, so capture what they were doing on a daily basis, but do it without any typing at all. And to do that, we built something which was it was written in HTML5, but it was a glorified PowerPoint. If you pushed the right things, it went to the right places. But really, it was about, and it didn't even save any data. It was that early a product, but it was really about sort of saying, will this interface work? And we found out very quickly. Well, in fact, right after we were lucky enough to grab a couple of very key clients earlier on that were interested in what we were doing, we showed it to them and they said, yeah, right, we'll have that. And I'm like, shit, we haven't built that. That's very, very early on. All we've done right now is just shown you what, and I guess from us, it was an MVP on an ideology and an MVP on a user experience, as opposed to the deep down technical issues of how are we going to store the data, how are we going to cache it, how are we going to worry about offline, online, all that stuff, which came into the product very, very quickly. In the beginning, it was this whole concept of will this even work? And from there, we sort of just built it up. So it was a series of, if you like, rapid prototyping, but it was a series of things where we would trial a couple of things and then introduce it. We were lucky enough to have some very, very good and patient early adopters, and they were willing to go on that journey with us, of pushing the envelope a little bit in terms of what we do, but at the same time of being a little bit forgiving about it not being 100% perfect at this stage. And but yeah, we made some really unique discoveries that we would not have made if we had a bunch of people sitting in a room for 6 months nutting out every single possible permutation we could think of. We still wouldn't have got to where the product that we got as quickly as we got, or the quality that we got, because it's just, once you actually start testing these things on people, it really does, things come to light that you just had no idea it was going to happen. And and so I think that sort of, the MVP for us was proving a concept, but then very shortly after we had a number of others, and so I know it's not that traditional definition of MVP, but you don't normally build an MVP in less than 24 hours either. So.
That sounds an interesting challenge. With your background, have you ever worked through a poor MVP? I mean, Trevor highlighted that, and we know that once you get technical people in a room, they'll overload on functions and features. And
Oh, absolutely.
the lights are going to shine, right?
Yeah, so when I was running innovation for AXA, I had teams based all over the world, but one of our teams, they went off and developed. It was very similar to a scheduling product, and what they and again, this was a classic example of a bunch of engineers getting to a room and designing something that they could design, and never which asking themselves the one question which is really one of the questions we ask the most in CheckRite, and it's just because we can doesn't mean we should, right? And I think that's something that we take to heart in a lot of there is every time we look at something we go, yes, I know we can, but should we do that? Anyway, these guys built this scheduling software, and this is going back nearly 20 years, but we put in these massive video conferencing facilities called telepresence back in the day. They were about $400,000 each, so they were huge, and we put them into rooms all over the world. And we then needed to build some scheduling software for it, and so we built something. And when it came time to booking the meeting, you put a start and end time. And what the guys did, this is engineers going to the extreme. They put it so when you clicked on the start time, as you moved your mouse up, it changed it in 1 minute increments and changed it up and down. And from an engineering perspective, that's great. But in reality, it was so difficult to use, and they'd engineered something when the keyboard in this particular case wasn't broken. Typing in, 2 o'clock to start a meeting or 2:15 to start a meeting was not a broken experience. Yet they went and engineered this thing in isolation from the users. Engineered this thing, came back and said, "Look, hey, look at what we've done." And I've said, "Yeah, but you shouldn't have done that." And I think that's sometimes you can get caught in your own. They were trying to work out how they could do this incredible technology of, as you move the mouse, the minutes moved up and down, and no one stopped back and said, who has a meeting at 3 minutes past 7? It's your meetings are it's 2 o'clock, it's 2:15, it's 2:30. And generally for the most of the stuff we were doing at AXA, it was only ever 2 o'clock or 2:30. We didn't even have them on the quarter hour. So we didn't, that was they've gone and engineered a solution to a problem that really didn't exist. And I think
Beautifully said.
yeah, I think that's when you get, and that's where the MVP is so powerful, is being able to get that in the hands of people, and have people, look, as soon as we put that in the hands of people, they were immediately like, what the hell is this? This is bullshit. We can't, it's taking longer to actually get the meeting at the right, because it was super sensitive too. And so, they would get, all these meetings were coming in at 2:01 or 2:03 or, 11:59. It was ridiculous. And really, the existing interface was not broken of typing in 2 o'clock.
Thanks, John. And just to add to that, there has been research that shows if you start a meeting at an odd time, as in
Yes.
3 minutes past the hour, people will tend to turn up on time.
And maybe we're ahead of our time in that respect.
It's an interesting one, yeah. Great. I might go back to Trevor and talk a little bit about your early adopters. What makes a good early adopter, and how do you go about finding them?
Yeah, really good question. And I think this is a nice segue from what Jordan was saying, because I was intrigued to hear him say that he had early adopters who, were really patient and worked with him. And that is incredibly important as you're building up the actual product before going into the early innovators, which is the next stage on the launch formula diagram that people will see. But what makes a really good early adopter is not just anyone who will take it on board. It must be aligned to the market segment that you have determined from your research as to who you're actually going to target. And there's reasons why you've come up, which will be, in some other topics that we cover later on down the track. But as a bit of an overview, the characteristics of a really good early adopter are those that really love to be at the forefront. They're organisations or people who are seeking either some sort of competitive advantage, or there is an emotional job that you have identified that really resonates with them. They tend to be the type of people who are really embracing of new things, technologies, innovations, and they're looking for a bit of a deal that solves their problem. Because often we design early adopter programs to ensure that there is a benefit to those early adopters that we recruit in. So, for example, it might be something along the lines that when we do commercialize this, you'll get about a 50% discount for the first year or two even, because their feedback to you is just what's guiding your actual development of the product. So they are really, really important. They're the type of people, even as Jordan mentioned, they're the type of people who are looking for a relationship, and they actually become quite what's the right word? So involved in the project that they want to see it to be a success. So they're really good at giving feedback, and often they're people who are really conscious about helping their industry. And a lot of times when we're researching, and we don't just pick anyone, we really research each individual potential early adopter that we're going to invite into the program. And one of those reasons is, and one of those elements that we look into is, are they an influencer within their industry? Are they a leader? Are they very active on social media? Do they go into all the award programs in relation to their business and their industry and so on? And so, it really means that, doing your research beforehand and being really selective about who you bring in as an early adopter is critical. A bad early adopter, wow. This is why you've got to be so careful. Often the big, powerful, obnoxious, demanding clients can not be ideal. And there's so many examples of organizations or innovators that have gone for the top end, organizations, thinking that if we catch this big fish, then we're home and hosed, because we'll be able to leverage all the rest of the market, tell them that these guys are on board with us and all that. However, we have seen situations where those big fish can actually kill businesses, because their demands and leverage that they have with you can really, really burn you out. And they don't really care whether you succeed or not. They're just looking for a fix, or to get some sort of leverage out of it. And it may not even be that big of a problem for them. So, in summing up, Marcus, really do your research, understand both the demographics, but also the psychographics of those who are going to be willing enough to work with you, understanding that your MVP does a job really well, but just a specific job, and that they're willing to go on that journey with you. So yeah, that's pretty much how I'd sum it up, Marcus.
Thanks, Trevor. And I might just add Jordan to this conversation. In respect, and you mentioned earlier, Jordan, that you wanted people who are very forgiving, that the product may not be there at 100%. In my experience with having rolled out software globally, once people start using something, they become reliant on it, and so downstream processes and everything are impacted. In terms of CheckRite and taking it to market, did you have that experience at all, or was it sort of self-contained, and so that your early adopters were quite willing to just contain the product to what it was intended to do as an MVP, or did you find that they wanted to do it more quickly?
Yeah, I think no, we we definitely found with our early adopters, and because of the way we'd solved this specific problem, and even ourselves, we went in specifically to solve one problem, but we did it in a way that was setting us up to solve lots of problems in that industry. And then we very quickly worked out, actually not just that industry, all industries, and so and I think for us, the look, absolutely having a forgiving and patient early adopter is a very key element. I think that's but and setting those expectations is true. But I think the most important thing when you're looking for an early adopter, I believe, is just is having someone who believes in your dream, right? And I think that's probably the most important thing. Can they see your vision? We'll let you know, and we say in CheckRite a lot, dream big, start small. And because when we do a demonstration to people of our product, we do it in a way that allows them to dream big, and they go, oh my god, we could use this for this, for this, for this, for this, all these things that they could use. And then towards the end of the demo, we'll sort of say, yep, okay, yes, you could do all those things, but let's start small, and let's just pick on one of those things. And that's how we move through. We do not give discounts ever. We don't discount our software. I think if you've got your pricing right, you shouldn't discount. If you've got your value right, you shouldn't discount. If you are good at articulating that value, there is no need to discount. We don't have we don't have pricing conversations, because once they see the value, and because we articulate everything in value, people really don't discuss the price with us anymore. It's in fact the only time, I think we've got it on one of our videos from one of our customers, Black and White Cabs, and they said, when I saw everything that CheckRite could do, I thought there was going to be another zero on the end of the price tag. So yeah, and we are, I don't believe we're cheap. But when it comes to dollar per value, we probably are very cheap, but that's we're playing where we want to. So we don't give discounts, and certainly for a when you're looking for an early adopter, I would be cautious about someone who is just trying to get something cheap, because I don't think that is not a long-term relationship. And that's not something that we go for. So we don't give, even all of our early adopters, they don't get discounts. But what they're buying into is they're buying into our vision and our dream. And the most important thing is, I think, is they are buying into their ability to steer the product to specifically specifically solve their issues. And you really want, so when you're talking with early adopters, you really want someone who is feeling the pain that you were solving, which is why typically we sell not into the lower ends of the organization, we sell into the higher ends of the organization, because that's where a lot of the pain is felt. And so we want people who are feeling the pain, and people who are good at articulating that pain that they're feeling, because then it's easier to bring them in onto the vision and to the dream, and allow them to steer the product within reason, but allow them to steer the product to specifically solve their things. And our job, I think, as developers and as a startup, our job is to really try and make sure that we are not building a product for one customer, and we're building a product for an industry or industries. In our particular case, we don't work in one industry, we work in lots of industries, but we want to make sure that everything that we do is being able to be used by multiple industries. And we often do that. We cross-pollinate across the industries we deal with. And so I think getting people to say, well, I would like CheckRite to do this. Okay, then our goal is to sort of say, yes, we can do that specifically for you, but we do it in a way that other people can use it, or we tweak the product so that, yes, it will do that, but it'll also solve that bigger thing, and won't go away from our core beliefs and our core ideologies. And so I think, really, I think the number one is getting people to believe in your vision and your dream, finding people who believe in your vision, believe in your dream, and are willing to go on that journey with you. And then understand, and getting them to really understand what that value is like. And once they feel the pain, they will understand, they will see this pill, this thing this remedy that you're bringing into place. And so they tend to be quite happy about that. And then very quickly, as they're going through that, they start to see other areas where they've got pain and where you might also be able to solve it. So our product sort of grew out of literally doing pre-start inspections on 240-ton dump trucks, to replacing paper in entire organizations in everywhere that they're observing data. And yet it's still the same core product that we designed right on day one. But it's just, and it was heavily sort of tweaked and pulled by customers, by early adopters into certain areas. And there are a number of features that I can look at our product and say, yeah, that was specifically done. I can see which of our early adopters, they specifically requested that. We've done that in a way that everyone's using it, but that, and I think to a certain extent, they get a bit of ownership on that too, because they sort of, they asked for something, it was put in there. And that creates, I think creating stickiness is really important in any product. You want to create stickiness. You want it to, and there's ways you can do that, either by going deeper or going broader, or a combination of both. But if you can go broader and doing lots of different things in an organization, that gives you stickiness. But if you can go deeper, that also gives you stickiness, and then makes it very hard for them to leave. And which is, I think one of the other things that we said right from the beginning is we don't want contracts. We don't want people signing up to contracts, because I want them to be able to leave at any point, but I want to make them so happy that they never want to. And I think for an early adopter as well, even if you're saying to them, yes, we're going to give you 50% discount, but we want you to sign up for 2 years, that's really difficult. We actually sort of said to them, it's month by month. You can leave whenever you like. Just stop using the product and we'll stop charging you. And while they have that comfort of being able to get out whenever they want, they don't. But then the onus is on us to make sure we delight them so much that and I think we like to do a surprise and delight in CheckRite. So we like to surprise and delight them with things so much that they just never want to leave.
So I might just clarify a couple of points there, Jordan, which is a great discussion. And it's great to see the perspectives of things. In relation to the discount and so on, this is actually, it's not an inducement. It's actually a reward, because many of the early adopters are actually providing their intellectual property back to you.
Yes.
And so we don't put it in the context of an inducement just to look, here's a discount because we're so desperate to get you on board. We actually put it in the case that we recognize that you're helping us, and we want to reward you in the way that for this, when we do go to commercialization, we want to reward you with this because we consider you part of our development team. So it's a big difference when we go out to market and so on. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Never be in a position to sort of have to discount your product just to entice people, because they won't be as sticky and they won't value it. And I think you're spot on in saying that what's most important is that you are solving the pain for it. So in that context, we're very much aligned.
Yeah.
Great. And I might take Jordan's word. And is there anybody on the session who would like to surprise and delight either Jordan or Trevor with a question or two, either through the chat or come off mute and raise your question?
I've always got lots of questions.
Go for it, Graham.
I really, really appreciated, Jordan, your straightforward conversation around the right sort of people to engage with, and also what you're actually seeking out of it. It seems as though that practical advice to a lot of people we deal with would be extremely useful. So I think, just hearing that, I guess the question is, what have you learned out of the whole exercise of going through from the very start to get it to an MVP? Was there any summarized way of putting that together? I think you covered a lot of it, but to me, there's always lessons learned as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest lesson that you can learn is that you don't know everything. And even if this is your domain knowledge, even if this is your area of expertise, you still don't know everything. And I think a really quick example. Our product originally was designed to run on tablets because that's the industry that we were in, and it now runs on everything. But it was originally designed to run on tablets. And as people are going through and doing an inspection, they'll go through various things and say, yep, check that, check that. And some of these inspections might be everything from 10, 15 minutes long to 8 or 9 hours long, depending on what sort of things that they're doing. And obviously in the product, we built the ability for people to be able to to quit out. And we, of course, we did the right thing. We had a button at the top that says, exit. And then we had a little confirmation thing also saying, yes, exit. Are you sure you want to exit? And and we thought, yep, that's good. That's great. That will stop anyone from accidentally getting out of a checklist when they've already spent 3 hours actually doing this thing. And we found that what they were doing is they had these iPads on little on little lanyards attached to their shoulders. They're going around. The lanyards were bumping against them, and it happened a number of times that they were able to, the lanyard, the iPad bouncing against them was able to both hit the exit button and the yes, I'm sure I want to exit button, right? And they were able to do that and quit out and lost 3 or 4 hours of work. And so, and that's just, we did all the right things. We put a confirmation box there. And so we quickly changed that now. And so now when you try to exit, we've got this little, our logo has got a tick in it. So we've got this tick icon, and you actually have to drag a little circle along the path of the tick. So that's something that's absolutely impossible to do accidentally, and to make that a very deliberate thing. And that's the sort of thing that comes out of literally working with people. Even though we sat in a room and everyone agreed that so long as you put a confirmation up there, it's all right to abandon a transaction. And in reality, we found that even that was able to be accidentally done. So I think understanding that you don't know everything, and even though you think you know everything, there's going to be things that come out there that you really had no idea. And the only way to find those things is to get it into the hands of people, of forgiving, patient, and people who are on your vision, on your dream, who will be who would actually see something like that and go, oh, wow, that's really. They're not going to blow up at you because something like that happened. They're going to say, wow, especially when you can come back quickly and say, right, here's a solution to fix that problem. And then they were like, yeah, okay, that's great. That'll stop that from happening. And then, of course, being very fast to turn things around. We release updates to our software all the time. And I think being able to do that as well, so that, that's really respectful to your early adopters, is doing fast releases, because when they say, hey, I saw this, and then the next day you fixed it, that encourages them, and that rewards them. That's reward for them, is that, oh yes, I saw this problem and now it's been fixed. It's fixed in the way I wanted it. So I hope that
Excellent.
sort of answered your question a bit, Graham.
Yes, it did. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Graham. And Gary, you've got a question.
Yeah, hi Jordan. It was great catching up with you the other night.
Yes.
My question is, what's the single most surprising discovery you've made along this journey, that somebody's come to you and said, hey, we're having this issue, that was just so far out of left field that you could never, ever, ever have anticipated it?
Not from an issue perspective. I think, well, every time you put in all the idiot proofing you can, the world builds a smarter idiot, and so I think from that perspective, we've always found some complicated things. I think the surprising thing for me, though, I think was when customers take your product that you've gone, yep, this is what this is for, and then they use it for something completely different. And it solves that problem as well. And you go, shit, I didn't realize we could do that. We rolled out black and white cabs nationally within 3 days of first meeting them for inspecting all of their taxis. And so they were using our software to inspect their taxis. We came back a couple of months later and found they were using the same software to actually assess their call center staff. Now, we didn't design it for that, but it was done in a way that, and I think things like that, we're constantly surprised by what people are using the software for, based on the principles that we put in place of just capturing observable data. They're saying, well, look, we could use it for this, we could use it for that. And for someone like us that say, our business model is transaction based, that's a fantastic thing to happen, because the more people use our software, the more we get paid.
And that's a really fantastic example, Jordan, of the assumptions that we can be guilty of when we say, okay, this is fixing this job for some particular reason or something, and you put it into the hands of the early adopters, and they, in their own creative way, actually go out and start applying it into different sort of fields that you just never even comprehended. And a lot of innovations need to be aware of that potential that can come out of it. Hence why you actually have formal sort of early adopter programs, because you're constantly learning. The whole phase of going from early adopters into early innovators and right through the whole process is really about learning from your customers, gaining adoption. Profits will come later.
Yeah, and I think, look, you know, my last corporate job was I was the global head of innovation for the AXA Group. So we had 150,000 staff. It was a big job. I was based out of Paris. And the one thing that I learned about innovation, having run innovation for such a big company, the one thing I learned about innovation is a product of diversity. And it's diversity of thinking, but it's diversity of cultures, the diversity of a lot of things. It's all about getting that diversity in there. And what's happens when you're sitting in your team building the exact the exact product you've designed in your mind, you're actually destroying diversity, because you're an echo chamber, if you like, of it. And as soon as you actually start rolling this out to early adopters, you're suddenly introducing diversity of skills, diversity of comprehension, diversity of all sorts of stuff. And that diversity that's the birthplace of innovation. And that's where it all comes from. And so when you've got that diversity there, you then start to say, oh, hang on, I never thought of using it that way. We had things that, like early on in our product, we thought, shit, what about left-handers? Because we were all right-handed. We designed this product around right-handed people. And then suddenly we realized that half the world, or 40% of the world, is left-handed. And so we sort of tweaked the design to make sure that it was working. We use our product during the day, so we tweaked it to be able to work at night as well, because again, there's diversity there. We thought our users were 9 to 5. They weren't. They were 24/7.
Yeah.
And so when they were using it at night, we could switch into a night mode sort of thing and again, that's all comes from diversity. Innovation is driven by diversity.
Fantastic. Well said.
Stephen, you've got a question.
If we've got time, it's just a quick question, Jordan. Given we're looking for early adopters that want to be part of the journey and will buy into the vision, how did you go about finding them? Were they part of the network you already had, or did you have another process for trying to uncover who those people might be?
Yeah, that's we were. Yeah, it is. Look, unfortunately, getting someone to buy into your dreams and your visions, that's got to be done through relationships. That's got to be an emotional connection, which you are not going to get just putting a message out on LinkedIn. It really does create that bond. You need to have that bond, and so I think for us, yes, it was going through our networks, and that's why networking is so important when you're starting up a business, is to get and to be able to be introduced and form emotional relationships and emotional bonds with people. I think that's because that's the only way they're going to trust you enough, because ultimately it's a trust thing. Certainly when it comes down to taking on a product that is not proven and is not in the market, we haven't sold millions of copies yet. To ask someone to do that involves a hell of a lot of trust, and to get that trust, you have to do that through a relationship. You have to build a relationship with that person, and so that organization, and that's where you get your forgiveness. That's where your patience. That all comes from a relationship. So I think yes, your best early adopters are going to be someone you have a relationship with, and so you need to try and form that relationship if you don't have it, and build that side of things. So you build up the trust, and so then you get that forgiveness and patience.
Thanks, Jordan. We've sort of come towards the end of the session. We'll be providing everybody with a copy of our interactive launch formula deck that you can have a look at all the various aspects of what goes through the launch formula from where to go. We'll also be drawing a name out of a hat after this meeting, and once we stop the recording, for a consulting session, complimentary consulting session for one lucky participant. If Trevor's feeling good, he might do 2, but you never know. But we're only going to offer that to people who are on the call, not to anybody who just looks up the recording. Now, the recording will be on our YouTube channel, so if you haven't had an opportunity as yet, please subscribe, and look forward to coming together again. I'm just having a quick look at my diary. 22nd of February, put it in your diaries now. For the next episode, we'll take a bit of a break over December, January, given the holiday season, and I look forward to the next event. Again, I'd like you all to join me, and thanks, Jordan, and thanks, Trevor, for your
Yeah, well done.
participation.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Trevor.
Jordan.
Marcus.